Hello and welcome on Autoglobe Total Transport Program. Yes, the only transport program that keeps you abreast on transportation issues, challenges, and of course we try as much as possible to bring in experts and authorities to find solutions to all those challenges and issues. My name is Oluwa Damlalaojo. Welcome on the show once again. But before we go ahead on the program today, let's just go on a quick break, of course, to show you the transport trending news. I'm very back. Stay with us. Welcome back, still Autoglobe Total Transport Program. Yes, my name is Uluwa Damilolaujo. Right here we have our guest already in the studio in person of Engineer Benedict Oko, the technical director, Auto Medics. Today we're talking about the major safety tips on vehicle service because we have a lot of vehicle failures. So what is the importance of vehicle servicing? This is what we're talking about today with the technical director, Auto Medics, in person of Engineer Benedict Oko. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm fine. What?
How's it going?
Yeah, okay.
Thank you for being on the show today.
My pleasure.
Okay, so let's go straight to what we have for today. First off, how important is vehicle servicing?
Servicing of a vehicle is actually the reasons why your vehicle will be on the road, because if you don't service your vehicle regularly, it will render your vehicle not fit for the road. Therefore, you need to service your vehicle regularly to ensure it is roadworthy.
Okay, great stuff. So right now, you said regularly. How often do I have to service my vehicle?
We have what we call periodic service maintenance, which occur periodically, depending when the services are required, and this can come based on mileage covered or maybe time covered. These are what we call the PMS, preventive maintenance service. And then we also have services that will occur, that we call a predictive maintenance. While you're doing the PMS, that is a periodic maintenance service, you can also predict when next you probably will need some specific repairs that will be carried out on your vehicle. Okay. But what we discover most times is that the kind of repairs we carried out here mostly are breakdowns. Vehicles just break down because people don't do any of those services until we have a problem.
So tell me, I mentioned earlier that we have a lot of vehicle failures. So right now, would you like to explain the reasons behind these vehicle failures we have often?
Major part of it has to do with lack of services, negligence of carried out services when they are due. And sometimes too, we don't really perceive when we have, changes that occur on our vehicle due to wear that occur naturally on those vehicles. So those are the reasons why we have breakdowns.
Okay, there is no specific reasons, probably for the brakes, the tires, and of course the steering and the rest of the vehicle.
I will actually shock you because we have, records to actually prove the percentage of vehicles that have actually gone for vehicle inspection service, for testing and the rate at which they fail. I have the records here that show that the suspension system, part of the 23% failure, And then we have the service brake, which are the normal brakes, 8%.
Okay.
Then we have the parking brakes, 15%. Then the lighting system, we also have 18% failure. Then the tires, we have 17%. Then the steering system carries 19%. So you can actually see that there's a lot of failure. If you look at it in total, you actually discover that the steering, brakes, and suspension system carries a greater percentage of the failures. And you will ask, why are they failing?
Exactly. Why are they failing?
Well, the majority of the issue has to do with the nature of our roads too. We know we have problem with our road, but that is not an excuse. I look at it in three ways, three dimensions.
Okay.
When you look at vehicle maintenance, it's in three ways. The first thing has to do with the vehicle. The second one has to do with you, the owner or the driver. Then the third factor has to do with the road network. Now, two of the factors you're actually in control of, your vehicle and yourself. The third factor is what you don't have control over. Now, if you take, care, a greater care of the two other variables, I think the other third one, you can actually manage it a little bit. So most times people drive their vehicle, you have a change in handling, and then you don't really care much about it until you have a breakdown. And sometimes this leads to what we call lone accident on the road. Because if you have a suspension failure, for instance, the ball joint pulls off or the tie rod pulls off, you have a lone accident. That is if you're lucky. If you're unlucky, you could collide with other vehicles or to pedestrians, which is also not good at all.
Yeah. Okay, so why do we have the higher percentage of suspension, which is 23%?
Suspension, because these are the part of the vehicle that are actually in contact with the road surface. So naturally you expect more wear to occur on the suspension system. Also coupled with the fact that our roads are not too very good. You have potholes here and there, and this will also cause undue wear and tear on those suspension parts.
Okay. We all know we have a bad economy right now in the country. So because of this economic situation, is there a way that there are some vehicle servicing that I can delay as a vehicle owner or, not carry out regularly because of the economic situation?
Unfortunately, there are no such services that you can actually delay or maybe refuse to carry out. For instance, if you have a bad ball joint or tie rod, you cannot say, I won't fix it because I don't have money and continue to use the vehicle. Eventually what will happen is that it will pull off, and that can also lead to an accident. The same thing talking about your engine or transmission system. Most vehicles today are equipped with warning or warning signs on the instrument cluster that warns you when the vehicle is due for service. And then it's not like the vehicle is going to shut down if you don't do the service, but eventually it has warned you, and other parts in the vehicle engine will begin to deteriorate after that. And if you don't do that immediately, of course, it has a grievous effect to the vehicle totally.
So would you say this a part of the reasons we have vehicle failures or auto crash on the roads? Absolutely,
because most especially if you look at the the records we're having right now about the failure rate of suspension system. Yeah, one of the greatest causes of accident actually have to do with things that involve the suspension, steering, brakes, and tires. Yeah, because if you have a bad tire, it will affect the traction between your tires and the road surface. Now, if the tires doesn't have a good grip on the road surface, that means your vehicle is not stable on the road. And if your brakes also are not good, you don't have a very good stopping distance, that is also a problem. And that can also lead to complete failure of the brakes. And talking about the suspension and steering system, of course, if you can't steer your vehicle, if you can't control the vehicle, then of course that is a danger on its own already. And there's also high tendency that this vehicle can also get off the road because you can no longer control it, because the moment you have a failure of the ball joint or tie rod, it means you have lost total control of the vehicle.
True. Okay, we still have a lot to talk about, of course, about this vehicle servicing and the rest of it, but because we don't have much time, we just have to go on a quick break, and of course we'll be right back on Autoglobe Total Transport Program. Stay with us.
There are many Malaysians who use personal cars to get around. However, Not all car owners are savvy when it comes to understanding how our cars work and what should be done to keep them working. Of course, this is nothing to be ashamed of, as maintaining a car by yourself is not always that simple. For owners of newer cars that are still under warranty, you can simply take your car to your manufacturer and they will do all the work for you. So this week, we spoke to our motoring writers at the Star on 10 things that all owners should pay attention to when it comes to their cars. A car needs to have adequately inflated tires to make the most out of its mileage. When refilling tires with air, be sure to set the air pump pressure according to the manufacturer's recommendations, located on a sticker on the driver's side door frame. A car's service manual usually provides information such as how often you need to change your engine oil and transmission fluid. In most cars, you can check the level of oil in your engine by checking the dipstick, which is usually yellow in color. You can check the level of transmission fluid in your car using a different dipstick, which is red in color. It is normally located towards the bottom of the engine compartment. A good indication of when transmission fluid needs to be changed is when it changes color from red to a dirty brown. The spark plug is a tiny hidden component that is a very important part of the car's ignition. Whenever you have problems starting your car, it is sometimes the case that the spark plug has worn out over time and needs to be replaced. Nowadays, newer iridium spark plugs can last quite long and do not need to be replaced so often. Checking how much energy is left in a car battery involves the use of a device called a multimeter. Usually, we would take our cars to the mechanic to help them check, and as a rule of thumb, it is a good idea to do this once a year. It really isn't hard to tell when your brakes need maintenance. Some symptoms include squealing brakes, longer braking distances, or just the general feeling that your brakes are not performing as well as they used to. In such situations, it is best to just have your mechanic look at it. The air filter is responsible for efficient airflow and overall performance of your car. It is an inexpensive part that is fairly easy to replace. When you feel your car is not performing as well as it used to, it is possible that you have a dirty air filter that needs replacing. The radiator keeps the engine cool, and the coolant fluid that it uses can last a long time. However, it is possible to refill it with distilled water instead if coolant is not readily available when the engine overheats. Of course, knowing how to change a tire in an emergency is really important. Firstly, pull over to the side of the road and set down your triangle warning sign. A very important tip to remember is that the jack must be positioned under the metal portion of the car frame. Once set in place, lift the car just high enough to take pressure off the tire before removing the nuts. Be very careful as tires can be pretty heavy. Be sure to take your punctured tire to a mechanic to have it repaired at a later date. The most important thing is knowing who to call in case of emergencies. The AAM hotline is extremely useful, and so are patrol units for specific highways, ambulances in case of accidents, your car insurance company, as well as trusted friends and family members.
Transportation never stops. Neither should you. If your aim is to go places in life, whatever you do, stay on top of your game with Autoglobe, the TV show that keeps you abreast of topical issues and current trends in 21st century transportation. Join knowledgeable and influential players in Nigeria and global transportation on this channel. Autoglobe Total Transport Program. A step ahead.
Welcome back. It's still Autoglobe Total Transport Program. I still have right here with me Engineer Benedict Oko, the Technical Director, Automedics. We've been talking about the major safety tips on vehicle servicing, and of course, he's been telling us a lot of things about the reasons for vehicle failures, which is suspension, 23%. We have tires, we have steerings, we have lights, and of course, we have the brakes. So let's just go straight to it right now. What are the essential services or maintenance required in a vehicle?
I think the basic essentials that people are really aware of the PMS as preventive maintenance service. Most times people just call them loop service, where they change the engine oil. Well, you know, it is just beyond changing the engine oil these days, because back then people just think it's only the engine that requires much attention, because we are used to vehicles being manual transmission systems. But today we are having vehicles that are automated transmission systems. Even the brakes are no longer the basic brakes that we have anymore. So we have electronic controls and all that, you know, that control all the systems. Therefore, these things are no longer the easy maintenance that people are usually used to, so they are heavy maintenance. If you are going to change your engine oil and filter, it is also good for you to also check the condition of your transmission system, to check out how the transmission is also performing. You know, because if you don't service the transmission, and that is why we're having a lot of transmission failures these days, because we're actually coming from an era whereby you have a transmission system that you need little or no maintenance at all, to an era whereby you have transmission system that has a mind of its own that also need attention, just like the engine. The same thing goes with the brake system. Back then, people don't change their brake fluid. All they do is just to change the brake parts, you know, and all that. But today you have a brake system that is under high pressure. The high pressure will generate high temperature. Therefore, the hydraulic fluid that is also used on modern vehicles have changed. And the manufacturers also recommend that after certain kilometers, you change the hydraulic fluid in the system, even though you don't have any brake system.
That is after certain kilometers?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
So you change all those fluid. But most time people don't do them until there's a complete breakdown or failure of those systems.
That's absolutely true. So now let's talk about oil specification. How can I know the best oil specification suitable for my vehicle? Because we have different oil out there.
When it comes to oil specification, you know, we've been feeding our vehicle with a lot of wrong oil.
Exactly.
Yeah. If you look at most of the vehicles on the road now, the recommended oil for them will be basically synthetic oil blends. Okay. But you find out that most of the oil that people use are mineral-based oil. And people just find out, okay, which is the best oil, you know, cheap oil to use, and they just go on using it. But, you know, the problem is that late, they'll just find out very late that they've been feeding the engine with the wrong oil, just too late, when the problem has occurred already. But manufacturers have also made it so easy that on the filler cap, that is where you fill the oil, there's always the specification of the oil always within there. You know, things like 5W30, and you see 0W40. You see stuff like that, because manufacturers also know that the owners of the vehicle no longer understand the kind of oil that are, because you have so many type of oils there. So they actually specify the type of oil to be used. But most time people neglect what is written there, or they don't read about it at all.
They don't even know it.
And then they just go on feeding the normal oil they see on the street.
Which is pretty bad. And of course, we have to check the cap, right?
Yeah.
I often have this issues with mechanics or technicians, I'll say. When you take your vehicles to them and they tell you, okay, your vehicle is due for service, and they just change something, which probably it's not needed. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Probably it's not needed for it to be changed yet. But as a vehicle owner, if I take my vehicle to a technician or a mechanic, what is expected of him to change or do?
As a vehicle owner, I think it's also important that you know how your vehicle actually runs.
Right.
And you should also be aware when the vehicle is due for service. But thankfully, most modern vehicles are equipped with what we call the service reminder.
Okay.
And when the vehicle is due for service, it will give you a warning sign like maintenance required.
Okay.
And then of course, it's due for service. But
Yeah.
one of the other problem is that most times mechanics do service and they don't know how to reset that reminder. So sometimes it
And
comes
it's just
on.
still there.
Yeah, sometimes it just stays on and you're driving with it all along and you don't know what it is all about, and then they keep telling you stories. Now, if your vehicle is equipped with a service reminder, it will alert you when the service is due, like showing you maintenance required, and then you go for service. That is the normal loop service where they change the engine oil filter, but that does not stop them from checking other things, like how your spark, the condition of your spark plug, the condition of the transmission fluid, the condition of the brake fluid. You need to check all those things and also determine their status while doing that service. And then after doing the service, they also do a health check by hooking up a computer to the vehicle to actually scan to see if you have other problems in it. Now after that is done, then they can reset the service reminder.
Okay.
Now some vehicles need to tell you service overdue by giving you a countdown. Or some will give you with symbols like showing the numbers of spanners, 1 spanner, 2 spanner, 3 spanners as the service becomes too overdue.
Okay.
So it gives you sign. And when your mechanic is working on your vehicle, you should be aware. You the owner of the vehicle should be able to know exactly what he's doing, and the mechanic should be able to tell you exactly the kind of service he's carrying out and what he's done to your vehicle.
Okay, great stuff. Now, I'll just take you back a bit to when you mentioned a certain kilometers when you have to change your oil, like you said. So, how many kilometers do you have to do, or do you have to run to change your oil?
Like the engine oil, depends on the kind of engine oil you use. If you're using mineral-based oil, it means it can't stay longer than necessary. They all have their own how much they can cover. Synthetic oil will serve you better. Now, if your engine is also, the internal condition of your engine will also determine. If you have an engine that is, the internals is dirty, you have carbon, you have sludge inside, it means that you can't keep the oil there too long, because the engine oil also contains detergent that cleans the internals of the engine. Now, if it stays too long, it means that it will contaminate, and then it will not do its job of lubricating and also protecting. Therefore, usually when we carry our service on vehicles, we check all those things before we actually fix when the vehicle is due for the next service. For instance, if you're using mineral-based oil, you cannot, in the environment that we are in here, you cannot exceed 4,000 to 5,000 kilometers.
Okay.
You cannot exceed it. And the reason is because when you're locked up in traffic, the engine still runs.
Yeah.
Now your odometer doesn't count. But how are you going to make up for all the time lost in traffic?
Lost in traffic, yeah.
Yeah, and if you're using synthetic, you shouldn't go beyond 7,000 kilometers.
Okay.
So those are the things, but that is also dependent on the internal condition of your engine.
Okay, great. I actually appreciate the fact that you mentioned the certain kilometers, so our viewers would know what that is. So now, before I let you go, Engineer Benedict, give us 5 safety tips on vehicle service.
5 safety tips.
Of course, because we are in the really tight season.
Yeah, well, the first thing I always talk about will be your tires. The condition of your tires really matters, and we're not just looking about the tire tread depth, and then your tire tells you a lot that is also happening to your vehicle, the steering, suspension, and braking. Because if your tire is wearing on one side, it's telling you a story. If your tire is also wearing from the outer side, it's also telling you something. And then one important thing is that most people don't even take recognition of what their tire pressure should be. They just go to the roadside vulcanizer and then inflate whatever pressure the vulcanizer decides. But fortunately, you can actually know where the tire pressure of your vehicle is. And on most vehicles, it's on the driver door B pillar. That is on the driver's door where the door latches to. There's a sticker there that tells you the tire pressure on leading, that is when you're not carrying load, and then the tire pressure when you're carrying load. It also gives you different tire sizes and the pressure you're supposed to inflate in those tires. But you know what happens most times is that when people are traveling, most especially the commuter buses, after loading their vehicle with all the load, They stop on the roadside to inflate the tires.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, this is what is going to happen. The tire is under pressure with the load. Then you have increased the pressure. You are going to travel long distance. The speed is going to increase the pressure. The hot road surface is going to increase the pressure. Now, what is likely is a blowout. And that is why most times you see tires blow out, and then that leads to accident. Then the suspension system, the tie rods, the ball joints are things you should not toy with at all. Then your brake systems are very important, most especially the service brakes. Because if you toy with them, your stopping distance will be compromised. And if your braking is not even, it might also lead to the vehicle skidding off the road or veering off the road. So those things are very, very important. Those are my key points.
Okay, thank you very much, Engineer Benedict Oko, for being on the show. And I'm very sure our viewers have learned a lot today on vehicle service. Thank you very much for being on the show, Engineer Benedict.
My pleasure.
All right, and of course, that's how we wrap things up on Autoglobe Total Transport Program. And as you've heard it from Engineer Benedict, the Technical Director, Auto Medics. Let's be careful on the road, okay? It's the Yuletide season, and of course, compliments of the season to our viewers out there. My name is Oluwa Damilolaujo. You can go on our social media platforms on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Autoglobe TV. All right, make sure you're safe and be gracious. Bye for now.